Hi everyone, it's Shannon and welcome to today's video. So if you've read the title, you know I'm going to be ranking all of the Walt Disney World value resorts in this video today. So I recently did a top 5 with 2 honorable mentions for DVC resorts with families for small children. And right now what I'm going to do is do some rankings of the value, moderate, and then the deluxe resorts. But again, these are going to be my personal rankings. So keep in mind that I am also a family with a small child. So our son is 6, almost 7, and my rankings based on our family demographic. There's some other things considering just kind of personal preference as well, but a lot of it also is our family demographic. So keep that in mind. If my number 5 is your number 1, totally okay. You can tell me in the comments if you disagree with me. But, again, I just want to give kind of my rankings because a lot of people ask me, like, which is the best value? Which one would you pick? So I'm going to basically just do a ranking and kind of give a reason why I'm ranking them the way that I am. And then also I will say that even my number 5 or the last place on all of my list, I would still stay there. There is no Disney resort that I would not stay at. And actually I've stayed at 2 of the 3 All-Stars. I would definitely go back. And then I've stayed at most of the other resorts as well. So I think I'd rather be at an All-Star resort than being off property. It's just, that's how we are. We'd rather be in the Disney bubble. So we would much rather be at my least favorite resort on Disney property than any other resort on property. And that would include like the Four Seasons. I would rather be at, a value than the Four Seasons because I want to be on Disney property. So a lot of people maybe disagree with me, but that's how we are. So let's get into the rankings. Okay, so for values, there are 5 values. There are the 3 All-Star resorts, then there's Pop Century, and then Art of Animation. So Art of Animation, I'm going to base this on the regular rooms. Obviously, I want to take into account that there are family suites because that is a factor, but a lot of it's going to be based on the regular rooms to compare. And also, so I kind of think like Art of Animation is value plus. It kind of is, it's in its own category, but it is considered a value resort. So starting with that, I'm going to rank number 5, All-Star Sports. So All-Star Sports would be my number 5. And now for me, this kind of breaks my heart because All-Star Sports was the first resort I ever stayed on property. 2008, my husband and I were then dating and we planned a trip to Disney World, decided to stay on property. And it was the first time I had ever stayed on property. I had recently moved back from New York and I loved it. I was like, we are never staying off property again. Like we are always going to stay on property. And I didn't know that there was this internal bus system, like just so much. I was just like, why would anybody stay off property? So that was kind of eye-opening to me. Now with all of the All-Stars and the sports is included, school trips, it is the least expensive, so you're going to have a lot of kids. So if loud noise and screaming kids is something that you're not going to like, the All-Stars is definitely not for you. But All-Star Sports is kind of where I think most of the teams you tend to stay. So the reason why I am ranking All-Star Sports number 5 and the least favorite of the All-Stars is for several reasons. One, it is not completely renovated yet. But that in 6 months, this will be a non-issue. But right now, as I'm recording this in September of 2022, it has not fully been renovated. And then also it is the first stop on the bus. So if you are going to a park and you are, let's say, trying to get to Rope Drop or trying to get there, early, you're going to be the first one, and then you're going to have to stop at the other 2 resorts. Not a huge issue. Now that could be a good thing because you'll end up probably having a seat, but it's just going to take you a little bit longer. Now coming back, if you're really tired, you're going to be the first stop. So there's pros and cons of that as well. But All-Star Sports, I think most people say that it is the least favorite, and kind of weighing pros and cons. There's so many. It's really hard to differentiate the 3 All-Stars. So that to me, I guess, All-Star Sports is number 5, but, not by much. Okay, next up. So number 4 on my list is going to be All-Star Music. And originally when I was thinking about this list, the the 3 and 4 or 1 and 2 of the All-Stars really kind of switched back and forth. And what it came down to for me was theming. So the theming for music is, it's just kind of, not very interesting. It's jazz, calypso, but a lot of the things around the resort, my son, we stayed there. We were there in September of last year of 2021, the day it reopened. And it was fantastic. I mean, my son loved it. We ended up doing a split stay between there and Grand Floridian, and he preferred the All-Star music. So, and the one thing that, and All-Star music is in the middle. So you have some sports, music, and then movies. So you're the second stop on the bus each way. So that's kind of a good thing. You're kind of in the middle. And the other thing that I would say it has going for it is it also has family suites. It is the only All-Stars that has some family suites, just like Art of Animation. So if you are, and they're going to be significantly cheaper than the suites at Art of Animation. So if you have a family, a family of 6, and you're looking at, Art of Animation, check out All-Star Music because the family suites are going to be significantly cheaper. So that is a good plus. But the reason why it is kind of down the list is because it is just the theming. The theming is kind of blah around the resort. Now the rooms are all pretty much the same. So I was really torn in between the two of them. But so number 4 on my list is going to be All-Star Music. So that leaves number 3, and it is going to be All-Star Movies. So All-Star Movies has the best theming, in my opinion, of the 3 All-Stars. You've got Toy Story, you've got 101 Dalmatians. So there's a lot of things that your kids will, kind of resonate to. We have yet to stay at All-Star Movies. We were booked to stay there before the shutdown, and then obviously that trip got canceled. But my son was really into Toy Story, and we booked Preferred. I never booked Preferred, but I booked Preferred with the hopes that we would get into one of the Toy Story buildings because we wanted to be in that area. So, but looking at kind of the pros and cons of the movies, the theming really around the resort to me is the best of the 3. So that was the big winner. And then also on the bus, if you're going, you're the last stop. So that could be a pro and con, but it's definitely a pro when you're headed to the park because you're going to be, there's no more stops. You're going to get picked up and then there's no more stops. The downside is you're going to be the last stop coming back. So if you're really tired, you got 2 stops before you have your resort. And then also going to the parks, you may not get a seat. So if the bus is full, you probably won't get a seat. So that is a downside, as a pro and con. I personally don't necessarily care about a seat. I would care more about having, just getting to the park as quickly as possible, especially, if I'm trying to make rope drop or something like that. So, but for me, as far as theming was the reason why it gave an edge to All-Star Music. Honestly, those two I think are interchangeable because music tends to be a little bit cheaper than movies. And then you have like kind of that middle ground. And then also it has the family suite. So it could, depending on my what we need, we only have 1 kid, so we don't need a family suite. But if we were a larger family, music would definitely, edge out movies. But for me, it came down to the theming, and that is going to be All-Star Movies. Okay, now, so there's 2 resorts left, and the 2 resorts are both on the Skyliner. So that right there put them at the head of the pack over the All-Stars. For me, anytime there is transportation from a resort that doesn't include the bus, then that is going to automatically get ahead of other resorts, at least for a lot of, give them a lot of points. And you have Pop Century and Art of Animation. They are both on the Skyliner loop, and they share a Skyliner hub, but it's just fantastic. So really it kind of came down to which one is better. And I chose for number 2, Art of Animation. And that is, it's hard. One, personally, we've never stayed at Art of Animation. Again, one of the times we were booked to stay there during the shutdown, and then it got canceled. But what I did mention before was that I'm kind of basing this mostly on the regular standard rooms. There's only, 1 section, which is the Little Mermaid section, and those rooms personally aren't for our family. They don't have the Murphy bed and like the other value resorts do. They have the 2 beds. And then I have a boy, so Little Mermaid isn't really, popular for me. Now my niece loves Little Mermaid. She's turning 27, but she still loves Little Mermaid. So she would love to stay there. So that would win over anything. But, it's just a matter of, what works for you. But it's, like I said, Little Mermaid, it's also very, very far from the Skyliner hub. It's a good walk. It's going to be the furthest walk. So, but now with the things that Art of Animation has, it has a fabulous food court. So you have that, and then you have some tremendous theming. I mean, the theming, and we walked over there when we were staying at Pop Century. We toured it, and the area you have like all the cars from Cars, and then the Lion King. Just really, really, really great theming at that resort. So there's a lot of things going for it, but the reason why, again, I put it number 2 was because of the price. It is so much more expensive than the other value resorts. And I just did, I printed this here. I ran kind of like a sample time frame where there are no discounts, and the rates for their basic, like the rates start at All-Star Music is $117, All-Star Sports is $117, All-Star Movies is $140, and that's a standard room. So All-Star Movies is already seems to be the more popular All-Stars, which to me, again, makes sense. Then you have Pop Century, which is $158. So there you're not paying for the theming, you're really paying for the Skyliner. And then Art of Animation, it's going to start at $182. So the Little Mermaid, and that's a Little Mermaid room. The suites there are going to be in the mid 400s. That's without any discounts. They're usually in the 425, 450 starting rate, no discounts, rack rate. Now, the rooms, the suites at All-Star Music tend to be in the high 200s or low 300s rack rate. So before discounts, they can go, I've seen them in the low 200s, which is a really great rate for, a room that's going to sleep 6. So that is the reason why I'm putting Art of Animation number 2, is just because it's so much more expensive. And when you're comparing, apples to apples, it's just so much more expensive for not really anything more. So for that, the reason Art of Animation is number 2. And that leaves number 1, which is obviously Pop Century. So I did mention Pop Century on this rate was $158. We've gotten some really great deals at Pop Century. Pop Century is our go-to value resort. Honestly, it's probably our go-to resort when we're out of DVC points. We stayed there after the Disney Wish cruise, and we stayed there for 4 nights. And the rooms are small, so the value resorts, they're small, but the new design of all the values, I think, is done so well. I prefer being in a Pop Century or All-Star Resort designed room than being at Bay Lake Tower, because I think Bay Lake Tower is just not designed it's not designed well, and there's a lot of wasted space, and there's not a lot of space. But with Pop Century and All Stars, they utilize the space so well. And having that Murphy bed just really opens up the room when you're able to close it. And honestly, I think the Murphy bed is so comfortable. So we stayed there, like I said, 4 nights in and a standard, no pool view, just a standard room, 4 nights after the Disney Wish, and we absolutely loved it. We were, I want to say it was building 3. It was building 2. We were in building 2, close to the lake. We usually like being on a ground floor, but we got on a 3rd floor because it was, they could get us in a room faster if we got on a 3rd floor, and I was just tired from the cruise, so I was like, yeah, I'll take whatever you got. But it wasn't bad. It was really close to the parking lot, which was very convenient, and then it was close to the lake, so we were already close to the walkway to get to the Skyliner. So it wasn't close to the Skyliner, but it wasn't that far. It was close to the walkway. If we had been in building 1, closer to the front of the resort, it would have been definitely a lot longer walk. So it was really great, but I just love that resort. The theming is great. The food court is great. And one of the things that you have with Pop Century and Art of Animation is that you're right there. So you can walk over to Art of Animation and tour. Now you can't use the pools. So the pools, you can only use the pools at Pop Century, or if you're at Art of Animation, you can only use the pools at Art of Animation. But you can go to the food court, and that's what we did when we stayed the first time we ever stayed at Pop Century. We kind of, went one morning, I think it was the morning we left, we toured, kind of walked around and took pictures of all the cars because my son was really into cars at that point, and we had lunch over there. And honestly, I thought the food was pretty comparable. I know I didn't think there was anything special. Now, I do have limitations as far as what I can eat, but I didn't think one food court was better than the other. I thought they were very comparable. So for me, Pop Century, you've got really great rates. You've got the Skyliner. The Skyliner is going to give you, get you to Hollywood Studios and get you to Epcot, and without having to take a bus. And it's just convenient. So that is my number one value resort at Walt Disney World. So let me know in the comments below, do you agree, disagree? And especially on the All-Stars. I think the All-Stars were hard to kind of rank the three of them because I think it just really depends on preference. And, if you have a kid that loves sports, All-Star Sports is going to be where it's at. That's the one you're going to want to stay at. So it really just depends on, what your family, dynamic is. So with that, if you like this video, click and subscribe. That way you get a notification every time I post a new video. Bye everyone.